We are 15 weeks into the NFL season. Not only have the Dallas Cowboys just recently demolished the Philadelphia Eagles, but they have managed to tie them for first place in the NFC East. These next 4 weeks will not only determine the winner of the NFC East, but possibly the winner of the NFC in general. The Dallas Cowboys are 10-3 and have a potential to get themselves a bye week heading into the postseason, which I'm sure would be huge for this team, because the less playoff games they have to play, the less a chance they have to choke away a really good season. The Dallas Cowboys have been a really solid team for the past decade now. They have had a really good run with Dak Prescott recently, and before that they had a solid quarterback in Tony Romo. But none of those seasons have amounted to anything, because while this has been a storied franchise, they've got 5 Super Bowl rings, they haven't reached the mountaintop in nearly 30 years. Hell, it's been so long, the quarterback who got them there is now broadcasting on TV, and he's pretty old at this point. You know, Troy Aikman is getting up there in age. Hell, he might not be able to see the next time the Cowboys win a Super Bowl. But if it was ever going to happen, this is the season they need to get it done, because I don't know how many more years Jerry Jones has left in him. He is getting to the age where it could happen at any moment, and that means Mike McCarthy's leash is going to be a lot shorter, especially if they lose early on in the playoffs again. If they're not able to make a deep run, then this could easily be it for Mike McCarthy. Then they would need a new head coach, and I don't know, maybe Dak Prescott's time is up. I know he's playing really well, but something needs to shake up if they're not able to get it done this season. And speaking of this season, I want to talk about the first 2 weeks of it, because Dallas absolutely whooped both New York's teams' asses early on in the season. In the first game against the New York Giants, it was more of an overall team success. Everyone got a piece of the action. The first touchdown, a blocked field goal attempt, returned 58 yards. The second touchdown was a DaRon Bland pick 6 for 22 yards. The first of many. I know Dallas didn't know it at the time, but it was going to be happening a lot more often. And then the last few touchdowns at the end of the game were a couple Tony Pollard runs, and that's basically how they got 40 points and ended up beating the Giants 40-0. Now, Dak Prescott didn't need to do a lot this game, but in the second week versus the New York Jets, this is where he was more needed. The Dallas Cowboys offense started off really well in this game, with Dak Prescott able to lead them down the length of the field twice early on. One time in the middle of the first, with Jake Ferguson getting a 4-yard pass to cap it off, and then the second time at the very end of the second quarter, and this time Luke Shoemaker got a 1-yard pass from Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott ended up throwing for over 250 passing yards in this game. However, they weren't able to capitalize on every opportunity, as Brandon Aubrey would go on to kick 5 separate field goals, make all of those, and that would give the Dallas Cowboys a 30-10 lead, and they ended up winning this game pretty easily, I would say. Now, the rest of the first half of the season for the Cowboys would follow this similar pattern, where they would beat up on really easy teams like the New England Patriots or the Arizona Cardinals, and then lose to actually good teams like the Niners or the Eagles early on. And that's kind of the trend that the Cowboys would follow. But throughout the season, Dak Prescott has had a few breakout games that really put him into the MVP conversation. One of them was against the Los Angeles Rams in Week 8, and Dak Prescott balled out this game. I mean, not only did he play extremely well, he threw for 4 touchdowns and over 300 passing yards. Yes, he did it all. He threw a touchdown in the first quarter. He threw a couple in the second quarter, and he even capped it off with one more late in the fourth quarter, that one being to Brandon Cooks for 25 yards. And, you know, throughout the game, the Cowboys ended up getting 43 points and were able to beat the Los Angeles Rams 20-43. And not only that, DaRon Bland got another pick 6, to add to his numbers. This time, we'd only have to wait about a week or so before he had another breakout game. And of course, it was against the New York Giants. But what are you going to do? They play him twice a year. They're in the same division. It was going to happen. Anyway, the second quarter was all Dak Prescott. It began with a Jake Ferguson pass from Dak Prescott after an 8-play drive that started at the 4-yard line. And then a couple minutes later, he would lead them down the field again, and it would end with a Brandon Cooks 10-yard pass. And at the very end of the second quarter, right before halftime started, Dak Prescott had a 10-yard run for a touchdown, and all of a sudden, the Cowboys are up 28-0 at halftime. Yeah, that's about it. That game was pretty much wraps after that. Of course, Dak Prescott would go on to throw for 2 more touchdowns later on in this game, and that was basically it. A 49-17 blowout is what we were looking at for that week. And again, a week or so later, Dak Prescott has another phenomenal game against the Commanders. He's just beating up on his crappy division opponents. Basically, I guess that's what's happening. And against the Commanders, it ended up being 45-10. Not a close game. However, it would take a little longer for Dak Prescott to really seal this game up, as 2 of his touchdown passes would come in the fourth quarter. One to CeeDee Lamb for 15 yards. The second to Kevontae Turpin for 34. That was a very impressive touchdown. And the game would be ended off with a DaRon Bland 63-yard interception, because what else happens in Dallas Cowboys games besides Dak Prescott throwing 3 touchdowns, 300-plus yards, and a DaRon Bland pick-6? That basically sums up almost every Cowboys win so far. And that's been about this season for the Cowboys, you know? They blow out easy opponents. Dak Prescott plays really well in them. And the reason he's in the MVP running is because there's not really any other great quarterbacks. You know, Brock Purdy is being mentioned here and there, but no one wants to vote for, you know, Mr. Irrelevant, who is apparently being carried into the fantastic system he was put in. But that's not what I believe. It's just the media's spinning their own narrative here. If there were going to be a year where a quarterback wasn't named MVP, it would be this year. Hell, you got guys like Christian McCaffrey. You've got guys who are playing really well on the defensive side of things. Myles Garrett, TJ Watt. But of course that's not going to happen, okay? That's not how the NFL works. It's probably going to go to a QB. And the best QB this season has been Dak Prescott, if you look at the numbers, okay? Plus, his team's got one of the best records in the league right now. So there isn't much denying Dak Prescott of the MVP unless you don't feel like giving it to a quarterback. And that's pretty much why I think he's going to win it. Anyway, that's about it for this video. I'm sure, I could have mentioned a lot more stuff about the Cowboys season, but this was just a quick recap. And depending on how these last 4 weeks go, not only determine their playoff status, where they will end up, but also whether Dak Prescott is going to end the season with an MVP. Say he does end it with an MVP and then plays terribly in the playoffs. Could he lose his job? Possibly. That would be absolutely the craziest scenario. Anyway, catch y'all later. Much love. Deuces.